Happy Friday morning, everybody. This is a live tropical update as we have Tropical Depression 31 that has formed in the Western Caribbean Sea, and it is forecast to become another monster hurricane. This is going to be Hurricane IOTA, and right now the National Hurricane Center has this approaching the border of Honduras and Nicaragua as a Category 2 hurricane, but many of the models are showing even further intensification beyond that. And as I mentioned, it has been named Tropical Depression 31 here. It has closed rotation, closed cyclonic rotation. Look at all these little convective bubbles all throughout. And you can just tell looking at this that this is going to be a absolute monster of a tropical cyclone. It's already pretty large in scale, big convective clusters. Looks like overall right now most of the convection is south of this center, with a center of circulation a little bit further north, but it is supposed to gradually intensify. In the next update later on this afternoon, it is forecast to be Tropical Storm IOTA by this afternoon, and it's probably going to start undergoing rapid intensification by this evening. Right now, the steering mechanism is a subtropical high that's anchored over Florida right now, and I could show you that the evolution of that subtropical high. There looks to be a couple of different camps for the forecast motion of IOTA. A couple of the models, including the H-WRF, which has been incredibly reliable so far this year. That takes it toward the southern Yucatan, potentially even impacting Cancun, Cozumel to Cancun, coming up here in about 120 hours, 5 days. But it does look like it's going to pass very close to the northeastern corner of Honduras by Tuesday. During the day, or actually that'll probably be a Monday morning when it passes just offshore of the northeastern coastline of Honduras. It looks like Roatan right here off the north central coast of Honduras could be right in the forecast cone right now, even though the official National Hurricane Center takes it a little bit further south, closer to northeastern Nicaragua. This latest 6Z operational GFS and many of the other members of the GFS ensemble have been trending a little bit further north. So it seems like they're trending closer to that H-WRF path, which is just to the north of Belize, coming into the southern portion of the Yucatan, down near Chetumal in the southern Yucatan there. But it is very possible that the other camps could be more accurate, with this high being much more strong and sliding a bit to the west. You can see these upper level storm systems shearing out over top this powerful subtropical high, which is basically anchored over Florida. So the east to west steering on the south side of that anticyclone is what's going to take Hurricane IOTA towards Central America. There are a couple members of the GFS ensemble that actually take a northward track toward western Cuba once again. And that all depends on if this subtropical ridge can consolidate there off the east coast of Florida. We'll just have to step forward in the long range here and see exactly what happens. This is on the Pivotal Weather website. This is 66 hours, so the forecast for Sunday night still has this subtropical high focused off the coast of Florida. And it is possible that this northward turn could be because of a consolidation of this subtropical high just off Florida there. And we'll see if that continues. And it looks like the forecast by early next week, by Monday, the operational GFS, the 6Z run, has a little bit further north of a track for IOTA. It's a powerful hurricane, likely a major hurricane here, passing just to the north of that coastline of Honduras. There you can see Roatan, which is a very popular vacation spot off the north central coast of Honduras. And I saw that Honduras actually resumed tourism back on August 10th, so it would be possible to fly into Honduras with a negative COVID test, negative rapid test, or a PCB test. But here you can see that powerful hurricane approaching Roatan on Tuesday, during the day on Tuesday. And there's still a lot of uncertainty. This thing could easily dive into the mountains there of northern Nicaragua and spin down just a little bit. But the long-range models show this subtropical ridge focusing off to the east and breaking down a little bit, which would encourage a further north track. So you definitely don't want to rule out any of those GFS ensemble members that have a due north track toward western Cuba, potentially taking a track similar to Eta up near the southern Florida Peninsula, maybe the southeastern Gulf of Mexico. But some of the other models then curl IOTA down into the mountains of Central America, becoming another devastating rainmaker for much of Honduras, the mountains of Honduras there. But the latest operational GFS takes it due west, eventually making landfall into Belize. But if it does take that track, it will be interacting with the mountains of Honduras throughout its track, and by the time it reaches southern Belize, it'll be a much weaker storm, more of a rainmaker. This is Tuesday evening. The forecast has a major hurricane directly over the island of Roatan, and then the operational GFS still dives this thing off to the south with a bit of a blocking high forming over the Gulf of Mexico in the wake of this system lifting off to the northeast through eastern Canada. So that dives IOTA down into western Honduras, which is where it's going to be a big-time rainmaker. They already had big-time flooding, deadly flooding, in fact, from the last hurricane that came into the northeastern Nicaragua, Hurricane IOTA up there, eventually making landfall to the north of Tampa as a tropical storm with max sustained winds of 50 miles an hour, but a storm surge of about 2 to 3 feet came into Tampa Bay there. So even though this dives down into Central America, you still can't rule out that this trough coming into the western U.S. will pick this thing up and turn it into a player in the Gulf of Mexico once again. But the operational GFS dives it into Central America shy of the Yucatan, so it doesn't reach the Yucatan. I'm definitely watching this closely for intercept. I could go to Roatan if I can get that score a COVID test within 72 hours of arrival. It's possible, though, that this system will be interacting with the terrain and land of northeastern Nicaragua before it reaches Roatan. So it reached that area as a slightly weaker tropical cyclone. And then look at this, yet another tropical wave coming into the Caribbean that could develop beyond IOTA. So this is just yet another reminder that this hurricane season is definitely not over, not even close, in fact. And you could definitely see that diving in of IOTA into Central America, potentially impacting the Roatan area there in the northern Honduras. There's that island nation that you could see. And I'm considering an intercept, definitely considering an intercept in Honduras. I've never been to Honduras, but there's still a lot of uncertainty with this forecast track. It could dive further south into eastern Nicaragua, where the terrain is just not as chaseable out there. But right now, it's a tropical depression. The center is on the northern side of this convective blob. That's where the low-level center is. Most of the convection right now is south of this tropical depression. But tonight, or later on today, we'll likely see a burst of convection near the center of this. This is where the closed rotation is indicated up there on the northern side of this big-time convective blob. It's possible that because of the majority of this convection being on the south side of the circulation, that could lead to a reformation of the center a little bit further south of this official track. This is the official National Hurricane Center track, taking IOTA up to a Category 2 strength hurricane before making landfall right at the border of Honduras and Nicaragua. And this area right here is basically a massive bioreserve. So there's big-time marshlands out here. And if this is the forecast track in the end, then I doubt that I'll be heading down there to intercept. But if the forecast track is a little bit further north, closer to the island of Roatan, as the models have been indicating, with that trend a little further north, there's a big airport up here as well. And this would potentially, if the track of a major hurricane IOTA is over Roatan, then I'll certainly consider heading down there and intercepting this. May have to head to the Coxon Hole there. It's on the western side of Roatan. But right now, the forecast track, at least from the GFS ensembles, is definitely trending a little further north and then burying itself in this portion of Honduras. Out near Puerto Barrios, they had deadly floods out there from Hurricane IOTA. There'd be a lot of northerly winds getting piled up into these bays. So you basically have a 1-2 punch with storm surge and then deadly mudslides coming off from the higher terrain down from the mountains there in western Honduras, creating a major recipe for disaster out there across western Honduras. And there's the forecast track, showing a dying tropical cyclone there over the higher terrain of Honduras, but causing deadly mudslides throughout these coastal areas. But as I mentioned, many of the models are trending a little further north, just offshore, taking a major hurricane over Roatan. But we'll just have to see how this tropical depression evolves during the day today. There's a chance that with all this convection kind of on the south side of this wave, that could lead to a reformation of the center further south, and that would then take this storm into northeastern Nicaragua. But you can't deny the fact that that anticyclone is definitely getting forecast to consolidate further east off the coast of Florida, which would encourage more of a northward track of IOTA, maybe over western Cuba, closing in on the west coast of Florida. Let me show you some of these hurricane models, and these are the 12Z hurricane models from the Tropical Tidbits website, tropicaltidbits.com. And this shows a couple of the different camps right now. You've got this, the HWRF solution, still taking IOTA up near the coastline of the Yucatan, maybe even closing in on Cozumel, that location, a little bit further south. Right now, though, those models are pointing a track toward Chetumal, the southern Yucatan, just north of Belize. But a majority of the models, aside from the HWRF camp, takes this directly into the west coast, the bioreserve there of eastern Honduras, and then buries the tropical cyclone into the mountainous rainforest there of northern Honduras, eventually coming back out the Pacific side. But that's what these were forecasting for Eta too, and then gradually they came on board to the lifting up to the northeast, getting picked up by a trough or a weakness in that subtropical high, and then Eta ended up passing directly over the Keys, meandering around, coming ashore there to the north of Tampa Bay. But there's a chance that this thing still could turn to the north. I know that the GFS is definitely trending toward that solution. Here are the GFS ensembles with a couple members, outliers there, heading off to the north across western Cuba, but has a very strong tropical cyclone, potentially even a major hurricane. But that's an outlier track, and a majority of the GFS now members, and this is from yesterday evening's run, still waiting on the morning run, but taking a very strong tropical cyclone just north of Honduras and maybe coming into Belize. And that would be in about 5 days when that happens. The southern Yucatan, northern Belize, that would be a route of a very strong major hurricane. These tracks a little further south, hugging the coastline of Honduras, they're going to have some land interaction, so that's going to lead to a little bit of a weaker tropical cyclone, but a big mega disaster, rainmaker there across northern Honduras. So there's still quite a different, many scenarios. There's even some outliers that take it further south toward the coastline of Nicaragua, which is a relatively unpopulated part of Nicaragua, at least to the south of Puerto Cabezas. Puerto Cabezas, though, is over 100,000 people living there, as we learned from that close pass of Hurricane Eta just to the south. But a lot more bioreserve action out here, indigenous fishing villages as well, but really an infrastructure that is probably not capable of handling an impact from a strong tropical cyclone. Here you can see a lot of these members coming into northeastern Nicaragua. But the stronger solutions for the GFS are the ones that are further removed from Honduras, taking a track toward the northern Belize or the southern Yucatan. But one thing that can't be denied is at least yesterday, the trend of the GFS was for a further north track. So you definitely have to consider an intercept here in Yucatan or in Belize or in Honduras, where you need that rapid test or a PCB test within 72 hours to confirm that you're COVID negative before heading in there. But it is possible that a track directly over Rotan could certainly happen up there. And another thing that we have to talk about is the severe weather potential, day 2. That would be during the day on Saturday in eastern Oklahoma. And there are some photographs that look quite favorable down there for tornado potential in the jungle there of a mountainous terrain of eastern Oklahoma. But this convective flare appears to be a little south, doesn't it? So I wouldn't be surprised if this center of this tropical depression ends up reforming during the day today, a bit further south in the Western Caribbean, which would favor a track toward eastern Nicaragua. But there also could be a convective burst further north where this closed rotation has been indicated. That was the convective burst overnight last night that ended up taking this thing over the top to a tropical depression. That convective burst has died out a little bit, replaced by a convective burst further south. It's also very possible that during the day today we'll have another convective burst closer to the center here on the north side of this convective blob of IOTA, forecast to head off to the west on the south side of that anticyclone that's anchored over Florida right now. So really we just got to watch satellite and see where this center wants to consolidate and dominate. But definitely between here and Central America, IOTA is going to be a major hurricane. It's going to go through a period of rapid intensification. Very high oceanic heat content out here, near 30 degrees Celsius, and minimal wind shear on the south side of this high pressure for an east to west moving storm. In a storm relative sense, that wind shear is almost zero for IOTA. But we're in the Caribbean phase of this record-breaking hurricane season, and the long-range models are showing even another tropical cyclone developing here in the Caribbean behind IOTA. So I'm going to keep a close eye on this tropical cyclone as it moves east to west through the Caribbean Sea, potentially stalling out across northern Honduras here as a deadly rainmaker for northern Honduras. This would be taking a very similar track to Tropical Cyclone Eta once it moved inland, causing life-threatening mudslides and flooding already. And it looks like IOTA is going to take a very similar track into this thing, but it is officially Tropical Depression 31. Quite a record breaker, definitely a part of a record-breaking season here. And really quickly, I want to take a look at the forecast models now for tomorrow for severe weather. That's going to be in eastern Oklahoma. We'll go over to the old NAM, the trusty NAM. It's like an old pair of jeans that you put on. You know its biases. You know where it grips, where it's comfortable. So we'll go with the old pair of jeans. That is the NAM model here. This is the forecast for this evening. See, it has a positive tilt this evening. And gaining almost a negative tilt, definitely intensifying on approach to the southern plains. A big ski jump type configuration in the 500 millibar pattern. Looks like it's worth chasing in eastern Oklahoma. That's at 0Z. So good timing for the arrival of that wave, and it's intensifying as it ejects across the southern plains. This is the next snowmaker for the mountains of Colorado. Looks like maybe a 3 to 6 inch type snowfall with this one coming through. But this is a more traditional shape for the upper level jet stream to get severe weather downstream of it when you have this ski jump configuration. See how this is a ski jump? And you usually want to target, in general, the nose of that ski jump right at the end of that jet. But this trough has a lot of flow loaded on the backside. That means that the upper level trough is intensifying with time. It's got a neutral tilt here, trying to gain even a negative tilt with all this flow on the backside of it. And usually when you get these ski jump configurations in the upper jet stream, it means that there's a big low-level jet downstream. And look at this. This is a monster low-level jet, probably the most robust one we've seen since last spring during Easter. And this one has the potential for severe weather here across eastern Oklahoma, southeastern Kansas, and to southwestern Missouri on Saturday. That's a robust low-level jet in excess of 50 knots out there. Let's look at the instability in general, the Cape. A little bit of instability out there too. Look at that. Cape in excess of 1,000. And this system could even back up against I-35. So really anywhere I-35 east could back up against Oklahoma as well. Oklahoma City, the metro there. This is at 21Z. So storms will probably initiate very close to I-35. But this looks like a classic Tulsa down into a Muskogee, eastern Oklahoma type of a pattern. Let's look at this forecast photograph. Interesting photograph here. And what this shows me is that this photograph here is kind of straight line. You're going to need a right mover to generate tornadoes with this. Look at that weak low-level jet. This tells me that the instability axis is just a little bit behind the wind shear. At least by 0Z. Let's see what happens if that low-level jet ejects to the east of the instability axis. And it looks like that could be what tries to happen by 0Z. The instability axis further west across eastern Oklahoma there. The main axis of the low-level jet ejects off to the east. So you're going to have really favorable photographs further east into the Ozarks and into southwestern Missouri on the eastern side of the instability axis. Oh, I haven't been showing any of these models. Good heavens. Sorry, you guys. I'm going to go back over this once again. Oops. So here is this upper level system, and I was just showing you the, I was trying to show you this, but I didn't step forward on the good old live streaming software here. So this is how you can tell this is an intensifying system. Here you can see the ski jump configuration with the mid-level jet. This is the nose of that ski jump right here. So usually there's a big low-level jet downstream of an upper-level pattern like this. See how all the strong mid and upper-level flow is loaded on the back side of this trough too. That's one thing that's important. Whenever you get a lot of strong flow on the backside like this, it means it's a digging system, one that's intensifying upon ejection, and definitely does have a ski jump type of a configuration. So this is a upper level system that is timed properly to have favorable severe weather across the southern plains and Dixie Alley, for example. Here is that low-level jet, just about a kilometer above the ground. Big, thick, low-level jet, 50 to 60 knots out here, southeastern Great Plains, across the Ozarks. And at 21Z, the axis of this low-level jet is all the way back to I-35. So if the convection can get going early enough in the day, like 2 or 3 p.m., it'll have just enough of a residual low-level jet down here, banked up against I-35, to even develop a tornado threat. Let's look at a photograph there, right on the western side of that low-level jet axis. And you can see kind of a veered low-level jet, due southwest winds. Normally you'd want a more backed of a low-level jet. This is a pretty progressive system. There we go, getting that photograph square in the field of view. The storm motion, though, is east enough to generate a sufficiently high critical angle to still have some decent storm relative velocity within this photograph curve. Some strong winds aloft, 50 to 60, 80 knots out there. Surface winds south-southwest at about 20 knots. So overall, the low-level flow is veering out just a little bit too fast here. But I could see this being more of a severe weather event for southwestern Missouri. I'm definitely wondering if I should chase this. Maybe get out of Dodge here early. Head out and chase this setup. Even though it looks like it's going to be more of an evening type of a severe weather event. This is Saturday evening at 21Z. Look at the core of that low-level jet eject off to the east through Missouri. Central Missouri, you're going to have some big-time wind shear with that low-level jet in excess of 65 knots, approaching even 70 knots out there. That's a big low-level jet pushing to the east Saturday night through central Missouri there. Let's look at the HRRR and see what it has for convection out there. The HRRR seems to have a more progressive system. C by 0Z, it has that low-level jet almost due west-southwesterly across eastern Oklahoma. So that's definitely a negative factor, as the timing of this system isn't quite favorable for the southern plains to get hammered by severe weather. This is the 12Z HRRR, showing more of a Missouri event, central Missouri. Kind of a broken line of supercell storms there into central Missouri, with the HRRR showing convection also exploding into the Ozarks and northwestern Arkansas. But definitely a broken line of supercell storms. We can look at a sounding out ahead of those storms there in central Missouri. And that looks like a photograph that could definitely support tornadic supercells. And it looks like it's going to be more of a nocturnal event, probably after dark up there into central Missouri. I'm definitely thinking about chasing this setup into western Missouri there, especially with photographs looking that favorable. You can see the low-level wind is still quite veered, though, even into central Missouri. Look at that photograph, still due southwest to northeast, low-level jet. That shows you that the timing and the shape of this trough, even though it is more of a ski jump configuration, it's still not that perfect shape that you get with more of a due south to north oriented low level jet, and more back to the level jet with the 1 kilometer wind closer to this y-axis. But still a lot of storm relative velocity in central Missouri during the day tomorrow, but the 12Z HRRR is definitely trending from an eastern Oklahoma event to more of a central Missouri type of an event here. These are going to be individual supercell storms. Might even be able to get some renegades out ahead of the line out here into the mountainous terrain to the south of I-44. But it looks like this is largely going to be an I-44 type of an event, Saturday evening and overnight. Definitely the potential for tornadoes extending all the way down into the Ozarks of northwestern Arkansas. The NAM is a little bit slower with the system, bringing severe weather back to Tulsa, maybe even at least especially east of the Oklahoma City metro. But this latest HRRR is showing a more progressive system, a little bit faster ejection, and bringing that severe weather a little bit closer to central Missouri, maybe even into western Illinois. You could probably won't be able to rule out the potential for supercells, especially late night out there. But this is a photograph that shows strong kinematics with these strong winds in the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere. It is a bit veered of a low-level jet. So if you had your 1 kilometer wind a little more like this, more of a north-south type of a low-level jet, then you'll have even more storm relative velocity. You'd have a critical angle that's a little bit closer to 90 degrees instead of this 45-degree type business. But with a low-level jet that's approaching 60 knots, it could still more than compensate for this. But that wind shear is definitely parallel to this front, this southwest and northeast oriented front there. But the HRRR is definitely showing me a storm mode that looks supercellular out there. And anytime you get a supercell storm embedded within a low-level jet, that is almost 70 knots. Look at this. 68 knots, 70 knots. Even though that low-level jet is quite veered, quite southwest to northeast, that's still generating plenty of wind shear, even approaching the St. Louis area, that severe weather overnight there in eastern Missouri. Could approach St. Louis on Saturday night. And so we've got a couple of things to watch here in the long range. Severe weather into Missouri with this rapidly ejecting storm system and a very strong low-level jet Saturday evening. And we'll also be watching likely Hurricane IOTA at this time period ramping up. Here you can see that tropical wave that appears to have some convective towers, some hot towers, focusing a little further south with this depression. So we'll have to see how that adjusts this forecast track. If it's going to go with the GFS group that takes it a little further north, even north of the Honduras coastline, or is it going to take a further south track, diving into Central America and bring with it life-threatening rain, mudslides for northern Nicaragua and Honduras. There you can see that official track as well. And the severe weather in central Missouri for tomorrow evening. You've got the latest here. Thank you guys for joining me. I am planning on launching the storm chasing school type content. We're going to be doing meteorology. We're going to be doing storm chasing content as well. And that's going to be starting before the end of this month. I'm definitely heading back to see my mom coming up here very shortly for the holidays, and that's probably where I'm going to start the storm chasing school. But Facebook supporters, of course, everybody has access to this content. Facebook supporters do. You guys have been incredibly loyal during this entire process, making these live briefings and live storm chasing possible, as well as supporting our Team Dominator science. But the NAM, as I mentioned, is a little slower. This is this morning's NAM, and it is showing convection by 0Z still down into northeastern Oklahoma. Tulsa is definitely in play here. So the HRRR is showing more of a central Missouri event tomorrow evening, whereas the NAM is showing more of a slower, less progressive solution with supercells likely from southwestern Missouri into northeastern Oklahoma by the day tomorrow. So I got to keep a close eye on this. Got a couple of chase opportunities in the sights. This one down into northeastern Oklahoma or into central Missouri. Looks like Saturday evening, maybe a nocturnal event, but it is possible these supercells could initiate during the daylight hours into eastern Oklahoma. And if the NAM continues to trend slower, we could even have supercells back toward the I-35 corridor, including the Oklahoma City Metro. But right now, it looks like an eastern Oklahoma event with the HRRR showing more of a central Missouri down into the Ozarks of northwestern Arkansas type of an event. So thank you guys for joining me today. I hope you enjoy my weather reports. I'm going to keep these things coming. And thank you again. A lot to watch about, including Hurricane IOTA forming in the Western Caribbean and this threat for severe weather happening here from northeastern Oklahoma into central Missouri. So thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your Friday. Never stop chasing.